Today we're going to be looking at the new progressive revisionism of British history. And they're not just happy with destroying statues anymore. No, they want to erase a complete ethnicity from the history books. So, Cambridge University, a place of great learning and wisdom, is deciding that Anglo-Saxons actually did not exist as an ethnic group. Now, if you're wondering who exactly makes the claim, well, it's the Department of Anglo-Saxons, Norse, and Celtic. Right? So the Department of Anglo-Saxons, Norse, and Celtic are making the argument that the Anglo-Saxons, Norse, and Celtics did not exist. This they consider to be myths of nationalism. Now, it is true that every nation on planet Earth has this thing called the foundational myth. The foundational myth explains where the people came from. It tries to explain who holds power. It rationalizes the justification for said power. And it also tries to describe the absolute good versus the absolute evil. In other words, it's trying to tell people why they should give a shit about their country. It's a question that the Ukrainians had to answer when the Russians were invading. Right? Like the Ukrainians did not fight under the rainbow flag. They did not fight under a corporate logo. No, they're fighting for their country. It's a tough question that hopefully other people do not have to ask, but this is why the foundational myth is important. In layman's term, as I mentioned before, it's about why you should give a shit about your country. And it's not just in the context of warfare, but it's also in the context of cohesion. Like, for example, if your neighbor house catches fire, why should you go and help? If you see a crime committed in front of you, why you should go and help, right? So, a world that has nationalism is a world where people care about each other within that nation. But for some reason, this is considered harmful. They associate this with Nazism, even though throughout the history of mankind, every single country believed in nationalism. Even the Soviet Union had strong feelings of nationalism. So when you go to the far left side of the political compass, even the communists believed in nationalism. Even the people that created the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone in the United States, and they were anarcho-communists, even they, the first thing they did was to erect borders in order to say, okay, this is our space, this is the outside world. Like, it is part of human nature. It is human behavior. Humans are very territorial creatures. But because we now have a new ideology, which is corporatist in nature, and it's globalist, as some people call it, the idea that nationalism exists is now something that needs to be dismantled, because the whole way that the nation functions in a democratic society is that you take money away from the people through the form of taxes, and then you give money back to the people, right? So you do a redistribution of wealth in order to protect the needy and to create various programs such as free education, free healthcare, so on and so forth. But now there is a different mentality. It's like you need to take money from the people and give it to someone else. Give it to the people at Brussels. Give it to the people at the UN. Give it to the people that are going to be imported so that corporations can have cheap labor. This is the correct mentality. And nationalism would fight against that. So this is why they have to uproot it. Also, people who have families, people who have strong connections to their communities are more difficult to control. The perfect modern man is the person who was married but is divorced and has a child. Because a person who is married has a responsibility at home, has a nagging wife, which will tell him, it's like, hey, can you stop spending so much time at work? Just stop doing so much overtime. You need to focus on us. You need to focus on the kids. Meanwhile, a person who is married and is a divorce has to pay child support. So he's desperate. He needs to get work. And when he comes home, there is no wife to nag him. So now he can answer the corporate emails. He can talk to customers. He can do more work on his free time. He can be easily indoctrinated by the corporation into whatever HR agenda is pushing. So this is the perfect individual. An individual that only lives for themselves. An individual that only lives for their needs. And the problem with this is that it is a sustainable lifestyle when you're young. For some people, it may even be desirable and good. But when you're getting old and you realize that all of your family members have passed away of old age, and there's nothing or no one to visit you at the Thanksgiving dinner or at the Christmas event, you're going to be sad. And you're going to be lonely and miserable. And it's going to be only you that is to blame. The corporate family is not going to be there for you. The community, the knitting community, or whomever you chose as your community is probably not going to be there for you. So, anyway, right, I don't think anyone is surprised that Cambridge University is doing this, but what I am surprised is the fact that the politicians in the United Kingdom, which are conservative in nature, allegedly, have managed to win a significant amount of votes during the last elections to the point where they could have done whatever they wanted. And yet they take money from the taxpayer in order to give to Cambridge University to educate people into the destruction of the foundational myth that the United Kingdom is having. Does that seem fair? Does that seem normal? I don't know, like here in Eastern Europe, it would be incredibly outraged. Like this would be on the news 24/7. And if it wasn't on the news, you'd have people protesting about it because it's just bizarre. Like I cannot imagine something like this happening in Poland. I cannot imagine something like this happening in Romania, Bulgaria, or any other Eastern European country. It's just very fascinating that people are putting up with it. But as you get to see here, it is an American import, right? So basically, the people at Cambridge are so lazy they can't even think for themselves. This is something that I've been pointing out over and over again. The woke ideology is coined with the English language in mind. It started in Germany, but then it moved to the US, and it uses English as its predominant language. You notice this when they try to import the bullshit over to Mexico, and they're using terms like Latinx, or trying to abolish gender in the Spanish language. It just doesn't work because everything in the Spanish language, being a Latin language, has a gender. So you can't just arbitrarily dictate you're going to abolish it because the grammar of the language does not allow you. I've seen people fascinated by this on Twitter. It's like, oh, what do you mean like you can't remove gender from the German language? You have der, die, das, which highlights the gender of every single word. The table has a gender, the penis has a gender, the walls have a gender. But my point is that this is what the woke ideology does. Like when you try to put it into another language, or even when you try to apply it to a different science, they rarely change things. And the reason for this is that this is not an ideology that tries to convince people. Like as we saw earlier with the representative from the BlackRock Foundation, it's you have to change behaviors, right? You have to force behaviors, to use the expression, sorry. You have to force behaviors into people. So it's about force. It's not about convincing. It's not about negotiating. It's not about talking. It's there is no negotiation. There is no debate. This is how things are done, right? Like 2 + 2 = 5. You do not get to disagree. And that's why they don't even bother translating or adapting the terms. So as you can see here, like other professors are pointing out that the term Anglo-Saxon is inaccurate as the Dark Ages were a period of population change, including the Viking invasions. But others, such as Professor Howard William at the University of Chester, maintain that the term remains useful historically and archaeologically. A statement signed by more than 70 academics in 2020 argued that the furor over the term Anglo-Saxon was an American import, with an open letter stating that the conditions in which the term is encountered and how it is perceived are very different in the US from elsewhere. In the United Kingdom, the period has been carefully presented and discussed in popular and successful documentaries and exhibitions over the many years. The term Anglo-Saxon is historically authentic in the sense that from the 8th century it was used externally to refer as a dominant population in southern Britain. Its earlier uses therefore embody exactly the significant issues we can expect any general ethnic or national label to represent. I find it very interesting that the people at Cambridge are trying their best to erase an entire ethnicity of people from history. I guess they're trying to push the idea that Britain was always a nation of immigrants, which again is an American import. Like literally word for word, the ideology from the United States, which is that America is a nation of immigrants, is being imported into the UK. I do not believe that America is a nation of immigrants either. It's a nation of conquerors. I mean, the people that went there to the New World, they had to be taken, some of them had to be taken there by force. I mean, transportation was a punishment in many European nations because you were taken to a new land where you didn't have any more family, no more connections, right? Exactly what the progressives are trying to accomplish to a certain degree. So you had no more roots there. And you're taken to a land that was very hostile, and it was a very difficult life because you didn't have the commodities that the old world was offering. And they had to fight in order to survive. But of course, that's not something that they're talking about in history, right? They try to present it in a different light. Anyway, right, let me know what you guys think, and as usual, I will see you in the comment section. Take care.